Chapter 3. Second part. But, unfortunately, so will the same limitations. The fourth stage of sophistication, like the second stage which it resembles, eventually pushes itself out of the realm of believability. At this point, further elaborations become ineffective. You are then faced with two alternatives. First, discovering a new, acceptable mechanism to make the promos fresh and believable again. But remember, the mechanism you use must not only be new and legitimate, but it must be accepted as believable and significant by your market. Each third and fourth stage ad that precedes you, makes this problem of acceptance more and more difficult. Eventually, of course, no new mechanism will gain acceptance. The market will have grown tired of your promises and the mechanisms by which they are accomplished. Your prospects will have been glutted by advertising. You will have reached the fifth stage of sophistication, the most difficult, where the field is said to be exhausted, where competitors are dropping out of the market en masse. How to revive a dead product in this final stage of sophistication? Your market no longer believes in your advertising, and therefore no longer wishes to be aware of your product. In many ways, therefore, this fifth stage of sophistication corresponds to the fifth stage of awareness discussed in Chapter 2. The problems are the same. The strategy is the same. The emphasis shifts from the promise and the mechanism which accomplishes it, to identification with the prospect himself. You are dealing here with the problem of bringing your prospect into your ad not through desire but through identification. See Chapter 8. An outstanding example of a product which had lost its market because of such a fifth stage of sophistication, and then gained it back by a brilliant use of the identification headline, is the Postum ad discussed in Chapter 2, and its headline, Why Men Crack. Let's look at an industry that went through all five stages of sophistication, but perhaps the classic example of an industry which encountered all five stages of sophistication, and overcame them is the cigarette industry. The history of cigarette advertising is a continuous battle against competition, against physical and social taboos, even against the very success of its own current advertising, which saturates and exhausts the market by the weight of its combined industry expenditures, and constantly demands new approaches. Let's briefly examine the main current of cigarette advertising, first the progression from the first to the fifth stages of sophistication, and then discuss some of the side problems it encountered. In the first stage of sophistication, when the market was new, cigarette advertising featured taste, enjoyment, pleasure in the headline, I'd walk a mile for a Camel. Chesterfield they satisfy. This raw promise of enjoyment gradually became elaborated, and embellished to push it to the limits of believability. In the second stage, since you cannot measure the pleasure a cigarette gives you, the promised growth took the form of broader and broader comparisons, light up a Lucky, and you won't miss the sweets that make you fat. But, without measurement, the limits of enlargement are soon reached. So a third stage strategy began to be employed, a continuous stream of brilliant new mechanisms, LUCKIES they're toasted. And Pall Mall's greater length filters the smoke further. Camels protect your T-zone. And, as each of these mechanisms was accepted by the buying public, the originator's competitors adopted the mechanism, and began to elaborate on it, initiating the fourth stage, Philip Morris all the harshness baked out. Chesterfield regular and king size too. 9 out of 10 doctors prefer Luckies. But eventually the mechanisms lost their potency, and the government ruled out the health claims, and in the early 50s the industry faced a fifth stage market. But a new marketing tool, motivation research, had shown them how to reach this market without mechanisms or claims, without even headlines, simply by projecting strong visual identifications with the virility that the public had accepted in a cigarette. For example, any of the Marlboro virile men ads, or their imitations in Chesterfield, or Camel ads. Thus we have the full spectrum of sophistication confronting an industry. But cigarette advertisers also encountered two critical side problems. The first offered them the opportunity of doubling their market. The second, of retaining a huge market in the face of the most adverse publicity. The first challenge occurred immediately following the First World War. By this time the old coffin nails taboo had been forgotten for men. But there still remained the equally great potential market of women smokers, if smoking could be made respectable for women. The trend was definitely in that direction. The urge, the curiosity existed in millions of women in all social classes. Some respectable women were actually daring to smoke in public. But the trend left by itself would take years to develop. An advertisement had to be created to accelerate that trend. To make smoking for women not only acceptable, but desirable. To channel the vast movement toward liberation and equality of the 20s, as the driving force to open up this huge new market. But such an advertisement could never come right out, and suggest that women smoke. It could not even show a woman smoking. Such an advertisement was definitely a fifth stage problem, a problem in identification. And it was solved by linking a man and woman in their most appealing connection, in love with a smoking situation. The ad showed a young couple, sitting together on a beach on a moonlit night. He is just lighting up a cigarette, the first puffs of smoke are just drifting into the moonlight. She has her face turned toward his, and her words make up the entire headline and, except for the logo, the entire ad, blow some my way. Nothing more needed to be said. A vast new market opened up with forwards. The second challenge occurred 30 years later. This was the cancer scare of the late 50s, which continues into today. It resulted in 4 reactions. First, there were cigarette holders, water pipes, ceramic filters, etc. None of which succeeded in establishing a national market, since they represented too much inconvenience, too blatant an admission that the purchaser was worried about his smoking. Secondly, the scare produced a determined effort in the industry itself, to conduct its own research, to counteract or correct such claims. Third, it produced a temporary drop in cigarette sales. And, fourth, it opened up a vast new market for an already existing product, the filter cigarette, aided by the industry itself, which wisely gambled that smokers would not move out of cigarettes, but simply into a different kind of cigarette. Filter cigarettes had always existed, as a small, specialty market. But now they were expanded into a mass market. Millions of new prospects, who had never before even considered filter cigarettes, now sought out information about them, asked to be told which one to buy. A new market opened up. And it started to retrace the same stages of sophistication as its parent market had passed through 50 years before. First stage, cans micronite filter traps TARS, before they reach your lips. Second stage, 20,000 filter traps in Viceroy. Third stage, Parliament, the most important 5-inch, in smoking today, no filter feedback. Fourth stage, TAREYTON, dual filter for double the pleasure. And the fifth stage, in an industry-wide stroke of genius, right back to that flavor again. Winston tastes good like a cigarette should. It's what's up front that counts. L&M has found the secret that unlocks the flavor. And so it goes. In industry after industry. The same life cycle for each market. The same deadly challenges. The same willingness to adapt rather than perish. A personal note: in this book I have tried to write a scientific study of advertising, without troubling the reader with whatever personal ethics I myself may observe. Every copywriter, who has ever sweated for days, to create a new approach, will know how it feels to see that approach copied overnight by a competitor. I share every ounce of that feeling. But such events happen every day. And they are effective. Therefore, examples such as those detailed above must be listed, in all objectivity, as a business strategy that has and will solve competitive problems in the competitive industry. I include them here not as recommendations, but as possible strategies to be chosen or rejected.